Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization. It is September 16th, 2021, and this is your daily update for today. Well, there's no way around it. We have to take up the questions that are being posed by a new book by Woodward and Costa from the Washington Post called Peril, which confirms what we've been reporting since the November 2016 election, which is that there has been a coup underway, an attempted coup that was triggered by fear that Donald Trump was going to break with the military-industrial complex's commitment to sustain indefinite warfare, the security state, this mass surveillance, and so on. And this culminated in the events of November 3rd, with 2020, with the election, and then was consolidated with the January 6th events, which were minimally furthered by FBI infiltration of the demonstrators on what occurred that day. Now, what's the issue here? The issue is the continued Anglo-American military-industrial complex's control of U.S. policy, and it was being challenged by Trump's election in 2016. Their fear was that Trump would work with Russia and China to carry out a policy to dump the war on terror, pull us out of these endless wars, pull us out of Afghanistan, and begin a process of normalization which would include cooperation for economic development, including junking such things as the climate conference, junking the free trade agreements, and so on. Now, the operation to keep the U.S. entangled in endless warfare actually began on 9/11/2001, as Lyndon LaRouche asserted at the time, both in his interview on September 11th with Jack Stockwell, which you can watch on the schillerinstitute.com, but also in an interview done 2 months later with Al Bayan, a newspaper from the United Arab Emirates, in which he reaffirmed his belief that it was the highest levels of U.S. internal military security apparatus which was behind the 9/11 attack, and then blamed it on an Anglo-American asset, bin Laden, and used that to set up the national security state. And this was used to unleash wars, mass surveillance, and fascist economic restructuring. And who benefited from this? The largest private banks and financial institutions and the corporate cartels that make up the military-industrial complex. Not surprisingly, these are the exact networks that were involved with heavy British involvement in the beginning in 2016 coup attempt against Trump, which became known as Russiagate. Now, what did General Milley do, according to Woodward and Costa? He went behind Trump's back to talk to his counterpart, the head of the Chinese military, to say that, don't worry, we're not about to attack you. And if we do, I'll give you advance warning. Not once, but twice he did that, according to this report. Now, that's a violation of his authority. He's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was not elected president. It's the president who has the determination, the right to determine whether to go to war or not. And if that's undermined by the military, that's a step toward a coup. And that's exactly what's described in this book, especially since what Milley allegedly said. And again, we don't know for sure if this is true because Woodward sometimes plays fast and loose with the truth. But what he seems to be quoting Milley as saying is that there was real concern that Donald Trump might launch an attack against China. And therefore, he reviewed with military authorities, Milley did, that you have to go through him before you could respond to any order from Trump for a nuclear war. And he also consulted with Pelosi and others, including CIA Director Haspel, about what to do to keep Trump from starting such a war. Now, Donald Trump himself said he had no intention to go to war with China, that this is a completely fraudulent charge, And he said if what the book reports is true, this would be treason. Now, backing up that assessment of President Trump is Colonel Richard Black, the former head of the U.S. Army's Criminal Law Division at the Pentagon. In September 2020, Black warned that he had a strong belief, based on evidence, that there were military figures who were discussing the possibility of a coup against Donald Trump. And he said that the issue was Trump's determination to end the wars, including Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. Black said he did not believe, or does not believe, that Trump intended to go to war with China. But if Milley told China's military leader that he would give him advanced notice of an attack, then minimally he should be removed, but possibly charged with treason. And what Black said the issue was, is Milley's continuing opposition to ending these wars. Not just his opposition to Trump ending the wars, but Biden as well. When Biden pulled out of Afghanistan, pulled the U.S. military out of Afghanistan, Milley went on television and said this is going to lead to civil war. It's going to lead to Afghanistan becoming a terrorist haven, and the U.S. may have to send troops back to Afghanistan. And in saying that, he was joining such nutcases as Senator Lindsey Graham, who said the U.S. will definitely have to redeploy into Afghanistan. So this is the issue. The issue raised by the Woodward book, the Costa book, is, are there elements in the U.S. military that are collaborating with intelligence community networks, such as former CIA Director John Brennan and former CIA Director Gina Haspel, with political individuals such as Nancy Pelosi, as well as foreign networks from MI6, typified by the role of Christopher Steele, and media, typified by the Washington Post, CNN, the London Guardian, and others, to create a narrative favorable for a regime change coup in the United States. That's what's raised by this new book. This is nothing new to our supporters. We've been warning about this and discussing this since November 2016, since the election of Donald Trump, that his election was not just a U.S. event, but was part of a global rejection of the Davos establishment's efforts to continue geopolitical confrontations and to use those confrontations to push policies which are now known as the Great Reset and the Green New Deal. That is, to keep a financial bubble going to protect the bankrupt financial institutions of the City of London and Wall Street. They intended to keep us in war, both as a distraction, but also as a money-making operation. But to also stamp out any opposition to this using mass surveillance of the security state. That's what 9/11 was about. That's what Russiagate was about. That's why this book is important, to look at what actually was said, because General Milley has not denounced the book. He didn't say these things or do these things. He just said they were legitimate. Well, it's not legitimate for the military to usurp the power of the elected president of the United States. That's why we have a presidential system, where we have an elected president who has the power to determine whether we're going to war or not. Now, what's important in this then is to investigate whether these charges made in the book are true. And if so, we must reaffirm civilian command over the military. People who are doing things such as this should be minimally kicked out of the military, possibly brought up on charges. But then we have to take seriously this question of how do you get out of these wars? You have to have a policy for peace. And this is what the Schiller Institute and Helga Zepp-LaRouche have been putting forward, with the idea of collaborating with Russia and China, which, by the way, was what Donald Trump was talking about in the first couple of years of his administration. Collaborating with Russia and China on a development perspective, which could be used to help countries like North Korea, but should also be applied to Afghanistan. The idea that Afghanistan is suffering because of the effects of 40 years of war. Why should we punish them when the war has ended? Why not lend a helping hand, work with China, work with Russia, with India, with the neighbors of Afghanistan on a policy of using the corridors of development of the Belt and Road Initiative of China to foster an economic renaissance in Afghanistan? If you're really concerned about the rights of women and children in Afghanistan, don't withhold the money that's legitimately the people's money of Afghanistan. Extend more credit. Work together to build infrastructure, to build a healthcare system, to provide funds to have the transformation of their agriculture from opium poppy production to food consumption. That's the approach we have to take. So it's not enough just to denounce the coup and oppose the coup. We need a policy to win the peace. And that's what we're offering. Tomorrow is Friday. I'll be taking your questions. You can send them to me at harleysch@gmail.com. See you then.